Well, welcome everybody to our meeting, A Ray of Hope. And let me begin by explaining that the ray of hope is a reference to one of the great 7 rays of energy that condition all manifested life, the 4th ray of harmony through conflict. This ray energy conditions human evolution, and although it induces stress and strain on human consciousness, it is by means of the ensuing struggle that consciousness evolves, withdraws itself from the prison house of matter, and eventually achieves a state of spiritual harmony and beauty. So for those of you who have not come across this concept of the 7 rays of life, let's simply set out a premise that just as there are 7 colors in the spectrum of visible light, 7 pure tones in the diatonic scale of music, and 7 primary energy levels for the electron in the atom, so there are 7 rays of energy that condition the consciousness of all things. And the 4th ray lies midway in the spectrum of consciousness, and it's therefore the energy of relationship, the energy of the Christ consciousness that relates spirit to matter. So we've referred to it as a ray of hope. For although this ray induces struggle, it's the same creative struggle through which the caterpillar emerges transformed from its cocoon of matter to become an iridescent being of the air. And so too the creative struggle that each human being experiences in the cocoon of the personality sees a divine being eventually emerge, liberated into the spiritual air of divinity. So in this meeting, we'll be exploring the spiritual struggle that leads to freedom, how the 4th ray relates spirit and matter together through the energy of harmony, beauty, and art. And we'll delve into the true nature of creativity, which is to consciously work with these qualities and express a dynamic, harmonious relationship between spirit and matter in our own lives through creative living. And we have 4 co-workers to help us to do this. And together at this special time of the year, we shall endeavor joyfully to evoke the Christ principle in our hearts, the hope of glory as it's called in the New Testament, and to breathe it out to the world in group service to one and all. So in this second session this afternoon, we'll watch a video clip of a member of the New Group of World Servers, Sir Ken Robinson, who made his transition earlier this year. But he left a wealth of wisdom through his life's work as an educator in the arts. And so we'll use his simple wisdom as a starting point for a more esoteric consideration of the energies of harmony, beauty, and art, and their human expression, with the help of a colleague from the Lucis Trust, Leonidas, who works in the Greek section of the Arcane School. And unfortunately, Vincent Claessens is not able to join us today as his voice is failing him, but he is with us today, joining in. So in this session too, Maria Caligari, a former principal ballerina with the New York City Ballet, chosen by George Balanchine, performed over 40 soloist roles in Balanchine's ballets. And we look forward to hearing from her too. And after this, we'll be experimenting with a group exercise of the creative imagination. With the energy of hope, we'll project our imaginations into the future to observe the sort of world that we hope will become the new reality. We'll then discuss our experiences, thoughts, hopes, and visions in the final session of the day with the 5 or 4 co-workers and all participants who wish to make use of the chat room facility. But for now, our first session, we're going to reflect on the Christ principle and examine its relationship to the fourth ray of harmony through conflict. The Christ demonstrated how to live as a soul in form. He was an outstanding expression of a perfected human being, mastering all the lessons that matter has to give, able to express beauty and harmony of the spirit through form. So the Christ principle, we also know, is the Buddhic principle, for both the Christ and the Buddha demonstrated the energy of a plane of consciousness that's governed by the fourth ray of harmony and beauty. And esoteric teachings call it the Buddhic plane, or the plane of the intuition. So just to set the scene for our discussion, we're going to spend 10 minutes or so reflecting on a great work of art, which beautifully expresses the Christ consciousness. But first, let me introduce you to Sarah Merrifield and Mario Eugster. Hello to both of you.
Hello, Chris.
Mario, hello, Mario. And
Hello.
Sarah.
Hello.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Sarah is a longtime friend of ours whose husband, Stanford, worked at the Lucis Trust for many years. She is a student of Steiner and Bailey and is associated with Ashdown Arts, a group of professional and semi-professional artists based in around Forest Row, East Sussex, in the UK. And Mario is, I'm sure, a familiar face to many of you because he's often spoken and played for us at Arcane School conferences. Mario is principal music therapist for a National Health Service Foundation trust, specializing in working with people affected by psychosis, integrating music-centered approaches and mentalization. He's engaging in research and development in the arts therapies and collaboration across disciplines, including development of family music therapy. Thank you, Sarah. So we look forward to talking to both of you after the reflection. For this, we have chosen what the spiritual teacher Rudolf Steiner considered to be one of the greatest paintings of all time, the Sistine Madonna and Child by Raphael. Can we show this picture on the screen now? So this painting was commissioned in 1512 by Pope Julius II, and the commission required that the painting depict both his uncle, Pope Sixtus IV, and Saint Barbara, an early Christian saint and martyr. And in the painting, the Madonna holding the Christ child and flanked by Saint Sixtus and Saint Barbara stands on clouds before dozens of obscured putti, not cherubim, I'm told. And a prominent element within the painting are the winged putti beneath Mary, and they've become famous in their own right and heavily commercialized. But our interest is in the quality that the painting conveys when it's allowed to enter our soul. And I'll read some of Steiner's thoughts on the painting as we contemplate it. For this sublime painting of the Sistine Madonna reflects Raphael's experience from the spiritual world, beyond the threshold. And this is shown by the green curtains being drawn aside to reveal a truth about the uplifting power of the archetypal eternal feminine. The mother and child hover towards us on clouds, which cover the earth globe, and they hover from the shadowy world of spirit and soul, surrounded in clouds which seem naturally to form themselves into human figures, the one being the child himself. And feelings arise which, when we permeate them with the soul, seem to make us forget all those legendary conceptions which culminate in the picture of the Madonna. We forget all that Christian traditions have to tell of her. And gazing at the sun-illuminated clouds, we may realize that the picture of the Madonna and Child is a sense picture of the eternal, super-earthly element in man that is wafted to earth from super-earthly realms themselves and meets in the clouds those elements that can only proceed from the earthly. So we're now going to zoom in a little closer to the image of the Madonna and the Child. And Carl August, Duke of Weimar and friend of Goethe, said, "As I looked at the picture and away from it, it always seemed to me a revelation of the soul, like a figure that arises before one again and again in waking or dream life, whose gaze, once experienced, is with one forever, day and night, moving the innermost being." So while earth forces are revealed in the folds of the Madonna's lower garments, the upper half with her veils is almost like a heart-shaped womb. It doesn't speak of, it speaks of a spiritual birth and not a physical one, and is evidenced in the child's firm and unchildlike gesture, holding his leg across the lower body. And the mother's veils are wafted in heavenly winds from astral and etheric realms. And both mother and child look at us with penetrating, even challenging gazes, as though impelling us to ask, can we realize the spiritual birth in our own souls that this image implies? For the whole way in which the Madonna with the Child are here represented seems to make us forget the rest of the world, forget above all that this child is connected with the experiences of Golgotha. Gazing at Raphael's pictures, we forget everything that afterwards is perceived as the life of Jesus. We live entirely in the moment here portrayed, and we are gazing simply at a mother with a child, revealing the eternal in one moment of time. And so surely this makes us feel that works like those of Raphael give birth to a feeling of hope, because they strengthen our belief in an advancing humanity. We feel that these works could not be what they are if progress were not the very essence of humanity. So a feeling of security and hope arises when we allow Raphael to work upon us in the true sense, and we are able to say that he has spoken to humanity itself in his artistic creations. Herman Grimm wrote that what Raphael has given to the outer world will always remain as a living witness of the fact that there was once an age in the evolution of humanity when the mysteries of existence were indeed revealed through mighty creations. Although at that time men could not penetrate into these mysteries through the printed word. In the age of Raphael, they read less, but they beheld a great deal more. So now we'll home in again closer, even closer to the faces of the Madonna and the Christ child. A wonderful mystery has inspired human souls through the Sistine Madonna. And when someone looks into a child's eyes, he can know that what is gazing out of those eyes is something that has not come into existence through birth, something that reveals the depth of the human soul. One can see that divinity itself, an occult and superhuman reality, looks out of those eyes, something that's still present in the child in the earliest present period after birth. And this can be perceived in all Raphael's paintings of children, with one exception, the portrayal of the child in the Sistine Madonna painting. For whoever looks into the eyes of that child knows that they already reveal more than can be embodied in a human being. Raphael has made this distinction to show that in this one child, there lives something that is already experiencing in advance a reality of pure spirit, a Christ-like reality. So let's take 5 minutes to reflect on this, the Christ consciousness, and what it means to us in silence now. It was very inspiring to reflect so deeply on these two, particularly their two gazes. And we're going to, Lawrence and I are going to talk now with Sarah Merrifield, and for any impression she has.
And Maria as well.
Yes, but we were going to start with Sarah
as
an artist in painting.
What I found particularly inspiring about that was that although we were supposed to be just looking at the Madonna, I was looking at you as well, Sarah, and I noticed a striking resemblance. So I didn't know which one to look at the most.
I'm not sure about that, but when I look at that picture, it is so sublime. It just enters one's being. I can just sort of feel it through, particularly in my heart, but right through my chakras. And one hardly knows what to say, except, I mean, I know that it's the one painting that nobody else had any hand in at all. This was his entirely. He wouldn't let any of his studio touch anything. And it really shows through for me, because although he was influenced by both Michelangelo and Leonardo, he goes beyond all of that for me in this painting. And it's no wonder it's such a universal gift to humanity, not just to Christians at all, because it's a universal picture. And you described it so beautifully, Christine. It was just lovely. And the gaze, I mean, for me, eyes are all important. And yes, there is so much knowing and understanding there.
What's interesting I find about it is the completely different feelings you get about the Christ principle and the Christ consciousness, because it's very difficult to disassociate it from the story of Jesus in the New Testament and the thought forms that are populating the sort of astral plane all over the world, where we have this image of Jesus, usually on the crucifix. But here we look at a child before he's already bringing that energy in, but it's before the story unfolds. And that gaze, when you sort of contemplate it, fused with that of the Madonna, it actually creates a third point of the triangle, and that's within your own soul as well. And you can feel something circulating that's completely fresh and unexpected.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, all the trilogies there. It's, yes, very, very inspiring. All inspiring.
And what's also interesting about the Christ child in that picture is that the Madonna looked almost in awe of what had happened to her and was sort of reflecting on that, holding that thought. But he, as a child, was looking out into the world already. It just, That was a lovely observation, you know.
Yes.
It's quite interesting what you said as well about the Christ having one leg folded over top of the other, which immediately gives him a very unchildlike sort of posture.
Yes.
Imagine striking a pike with the other. But, there's a sort of sagacity there and just a beautiful, pure energy that I find astonishing, that how any artist can capture the soul of someone, the character of someone, through painting the eyes. Those of us who aren't artists, I just wonder, how is it that you manage to get the gaze of someone and therefore their personality? Is it just that the contours of the face and the sort of geometry of the lines of the paintbrush start to bring that through? But I wonder, is it that at a certain point a picture becomes entified? It actually has a living sort of connection with that which is being painted, the person who's being painted, and the actual force, life force of that person starts to stream through it. I mean, you know, as a painter,
it is something that strikes me over and over. When I'm inspired to do somebody, it is usually a feature, mostly the eyes, and what they are trying to convey through those eyes. When I was working with the homeless people for the last 4 years, it was as if, well, they gave me permission to look at them. I mean, if I looked at people just normally, they might think, well, what you're staring at. But it's just in that moment that you catch something. And then there's a quality about people that you meet, and you want to convey that. One person, I think probably quite a few of you know or knew, was Caddy, because he had such a beautiful quality about him. He never actually sat for me, but I had the privilege.
We have got that. If someone could pop that up, you could have it up on the screen while you're talking, Sarah. Yeah.
Well, when I did that, he was in conversation with Stanford. He used to come to visit our house when he was living down in Brighton. And he and Stanford would, my husband, would talk for hours. And when I was at home, and it was a great privilege just to listen to them, I would sit and sketch him. So he wasn't posing for it, and I'm not sure that he even knew that I was doing it. But I love having that now, because it reminds me of a person who was one of the most spiritual people that I've ever met.
I think we have the friend of Stanford's, you're coming up as well, of David.
Yes, David and Stanford were actually twins, not biological twins, but born on the day and met each other at the age of 6. So he was very close.
There we are. And that one particularly, it's sort of quite small on my screen, but you can just, from where I am, although the picture looks slightly blurred to my vision, because of my eyesight, I can pick up the energy of that immediately. And that's what's wonderful about portraits, the way that, the energy of the person, the sum total of their experiences in life as well, particularly with this man who's quite elderly, hit you in an instant.
Yes.
And that's what's interesting about something like that. It's like an energy impact that you can sort of dwell upon at a later time, but you gain that sort of immediate impression of
it's always very nice to be able to recognize a person, acknowledge them as with all their potential. When I was working with the homeless, it was a gift to be able to do that for them, because people otherwise didn't recognize them. And then to be able to give them something of that nature, to say, well, there you are, and there is the Christ principle within you. If only you can find the light within.
Do we have Mario? Can we bring Mario in at this point just to include him in the conversation, and any sort of first impressions that come to you from that reflection, Mario?
I'm particularly in awe, as you said, with the power of the gaze, and also the gaze that goes outward into the world and goes inward. And for me, there's something about what you said as well at the beginning, Christine, about the fourth ray being also at the ray of relationship. And this is something which very much resonates with my understanding of music, particularly also in music therapy. And it's so inspiring to hear Sarah be working, bringing the art into the new areas of life and making connection with the living experience in life, where people go through struggles and are really, so the art really becomes a resource and a contact point for people to go deeper within and contact the soul. And so for me, that very much resonates. I mean, I also partly because I work so much with art therapists, and we have a lot of conversations in terms of the work that we do with music and art in this context with in mental health services. It's so interesting to see how art and music, how there's so much a connection in terms of the underlying principles, and as you said, the energy that can be attracted to a particular art form. So whereas it's here with Raphael, I have a very strong sense there's something numinous, a presence that comes through the actual, physical object. And in the same way, I experience music as being an attractor of something, which is not only the physically audible sound. And of course, the listening as well leads inward. So there's something in music as well where we go to the perception of sound. We make connections between relationships of sounds, and there's a movement inwards, and this kind of vibrational field of relationships. And if it's a piece, say by Bach or something, I will later play a piece by Bach and also by Beethoven. If you have an organism like this, it really can bring in energies that are emanating from the level of the soul. So for me, it's very much, I very much draw parallels from that.
Do you find, Sarah, I know that you're familiar with both Steiner and Alice Bailey, but when you're sort of approaching, before you actually do a drawing at all, are you aware of a point of tension building up within you, a sort of point of creative tension that's very necessary to the artistic process? I mean, the actual ray that we're discussing today is very much about harmony through conflict.
Yeah.
In order to get from conflict to harmony, we have to go to a point of tension to draw all those forces to a higher point through which harmony can manifest itself. When you're actually sitting down, before you actually start to draw a portrait, what's the process? Do you feel this tension creating, and only when it gets to a certain point do you feel ready to draw, or what?
Sometimes I can't wait to get going. And sometimes I wake up in the early hours and think, right, I know what I'm going to do. But then I can, likewise, I might have rather a barren time or be very occupied with other things. So I haven't been able to do that. But one thing I would say, the rhythm within one's life, I think within anyone's life, but particularly for myself, I find I have to have that rhythm that DK talks about, the time of meditation and contemplation and study, the time of service, and indeed, perhaps some of the artistic work is service, but to create within a day is probably paramount for me. I mean, that's the expression of everything else that comes about. So I feel that the creating side is so important, as for you, Mario, with the music. It just makes one's heart sing when it works.
What's wonderful about art when it's correctly taught, I would have thought, is that it gives a wider understanding of how to be creative just in your daily life, which is what we learn in an esoteric school or a school of discipleship, about how to bring that creativity into our everyday mundane activity. Because when we are about to create some kind of art, the originality of it, that which is formed in our mind, that point of tension is the very point of tension that we try to maintain throughout our daily life after meditation. And as long as you hold that point of tension at which the artist works, if you hold that point of tension in your daily life, then everything becomes creative, every relationship that you have.
Yeah.
Easy words.
Sarah, what you were saying, that you really need that livingness every day that your creativity brings, whatever area it's in. It's kind of, I was reading an article that's going in the next Beacon by Jung, and I didn't know this, but he described his role as being to shift our collective focus away from the historical Christ towards the reality of Christ as an immediate and living presence. Now, in a way, that's what Raphael did, didn't he? These commentators all sort of mentioned that it was a mother and a child, or it was something fresh. It wasn't the person who was going to be crucified, or it was something so great and so deep. And I think that's a big obstacle when we think of the Christ and the Buddhic principle, and especially the thinking of the Christ's reappearance, for instance, is this image of the historic Christ that is just so fixed in our minds, which is obvious from paintings and just all the memorabilia that go with those images. And to realize that he is living and present now in the East, and depending on what we do, will return.
Yes.
He's just waiting his time, so to speak. I mean, not everyone believes that, I know, and you have to follow your own instinct. But just mentioning what Bailey put forward about the reappearance.
Yes. Yes, I do think that's very important, and it's quite exciting, because when for me, when I look into somebody, and I have totally forgotten myself when I'm trying to draw them, or maybe as I have been recently doing a certain massage for people, I've totally forgotten myself, and then what I have in front of me, the person is like, I meet the Christ element in it. I feel like, no, I don't feel, but I'm reminded of Mother Teresa when she saw in all those poor, desperate people, she saw Christ in them. And it's that living element that that we all share, which is the way that we're going into this future time, I think.
That's what true art does as well, doesn't it? It expands people's vision. It adds the inner element to the outer, and it takes people to a new way of understanding and interpreting what it is they're actually seeing. And that's very much what all the esoteric work is about. It's about penetrating into something greater than what just confronts the actual visual screen. It's something that requires a certain, using, if you like, some of the imagination as well, but something more than what is just confronting the eyes starts to build up in your mind. And that's very much one of the rules that are in the Alice Bailey writings about the ability to enter our brother's heart and see his woe, and to enter our brother's mind, then to think, and to use that understanding of the inner person, and that to help lift that person to a high realization of himself or herself, and indeed to apply that same rule to ourselves as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, really encouraging that the qualities of the Christ consciousness, the group consciousness, are so strong in the world today that, that is our hope, isn't it? And it's more than a hope, it is being demonstrated through addressing need on every level. It's not in a sentimental sense at all. It's everybody finding their niche, a lot of people, and fulfilling it. And so that is the fulfillment of hope to me at this time.
And the same thing that we're talking about here with vision also equally applies to sound. Now, I think Mario's being very brave here, taking a composer like Elgar, and he's going to actually improvise as well. But that's the fearless. Is it not Elgar you're doing improvising on Mario?
So it originally planned to play music.
I wasn't listening, obviously.
Plans today we're going to have music by Bach, Beethoven, and an improvisation.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But the improvisation part shows the fearlessness, I think, of the musician, where the actual sort of understanding within what it is that you want to express creatively gives you that rhythmic process ahead of time, where you know that it's going to flow and it's going to work. Because if you actually analysed it, who would know what your fingers are going to do next? But there's a greater energy in control where there's not even any focus on that. It's just something that flows through you and through your instrument.
That's right.
Yeah. So let us hear it. We look forward to thank Spirit too for your wonderful contribution. And we'll probably hear from you later as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mario.
I think it'd also be good when we're listening to you, Mario, to apply that same contemplative, reflective state of mind that we had when we were studying the Madonna in Child, to actually work with you yourself as well, and to tune into the sort of qualities that are working through us as a group.
Indeed, because there's always relationship involved in music. And in music therapy, we often use the term musicking as music-ing. It's a word, it's a process rather than an object, and it's always co-creative. So even listening is a very co-creative process. And particularly when there's an improvisation happening where we all don't know where it's going to go. So that we are, even I think through Zoom, we are connected. Also at the level, we are now in a shared space. So I would invite you to bring the same quality. So I've chosen two pieces which for me also resonate with Raphael's painting, and just in terms of the quality. The improvisation, I don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but the two first ones.
I feel like I'm talking. Don't quite know where it's going.
So I'm going to play the 13th variation from the Goldberg Variations by Bach, and also play the first movement by Beethoven from the Sonata, Opus 101. And also being mindful, it is a big year in terms of Beethoven celebrations, probably many of you will know. And his life was permeated by struggles and this constant movement through struggle towards the light. I mean, his life there's so much encapsulated that fourth ray spirit as well.
Wonderful.
So,
thank you. do some air clapping, Mario. I'm sure there's lots of clapping going on if you use your imagination. It was wonderful. Thank you. I love the improvisation. Lovely. Thank you. So, do you want to add anything in?
No.
It's just lovely to end on that note.